start to. Okay, hello everybody. So today I'm going to talk about SMACSS. So, what is SMACSS? SMACSS is something. So, what is SMACSS? SMACSS is just a guide. It's not any new language. It's a guide on how to write your CSS so that it will help in maintainability and development with different contributors. So it focuses on using standard naming practices. And in the core of SMACSS, they rely largely on categorization in terms of all the stylings, how it should be categorized. So in SMACSS, there are 5 main categories: base, layout, module, state, and theme. So we move on to base first. So in the base category, all the styling that goes here are actually the defaults of your whole web app. So in the base, it usually contains just the HTML element tags and also their pseudo states. It's also a place where you do all your resets. Like, for example, you want 0 padding and 0 margin on your paragraph, or 0 margin on your header, that kind of thing, all goes here. The other one is called the layout. A layout is like a divider. Basically, it divides pages into sections. So in layout, you are able to use the ID tags, and the naming conventions starts with a L or a layout, and then something behind to describe how the layout should be. So let's take an example. Look at an example at page 15.
Nothing can do to see.
Actually, you don't need to zoom in. I just think you want to think about this. All right, like your web page, you need to design a grid layout. So to do the styling, how would you go about doing the styling? You'll just silently think through it, how you do it. So basically, it's going to have a UL element. Inside the UL element, there's a LI text to describe each of these elements. So how will you style it? So how usually people will style it? How people would usually style it is like it gives maybe a class to the ULs described in the UL tag. Give the styling for the UL tag, and then in the LI element, you add on the other tags to describe each of these small little elements inside the block. So this is okay for small application websites, but if you move on to larger websites, right, this is going to cause a bit of trouble. So how SMACSS would do it is he would do it this way. You will actually create a layout grid, define the grid in here in the layout, and then say that the child element, the L tag in the UL, is going to have this kind of display. And then after that, this class here would be added to the UL tag. So you all can get it. So basically, why the good thing about doing it this way is because the grid layout, right? This definition can be applied to anywhere in your app that is going to use this grid layout as well. So you don't have to rewrite code, and it saves a lot of space on your CSS file. And also, it reduces the applicability. So basically, what gives the styling of this UL tag is just a class. Well, compared to before, you have a class and then an element to describe it, and this increases specificity. So by increasing specificity, you will cause your teammates to fight over how this UL should design when they are designing the layout itself, because people are going to use it.
Don't have, right? Because you shared your browser screen on the Hangouts, not
your screen.
Go to Hangouts.
Oops.
Go to the screen share. Click the screen share.
Opinion. Share whatever's on your screen. Click on it again.
Where is it?
Again.
Oh.
Yeah, so you
Share screen.
previously only click the upper left corner.
Upper left.
Screen. Share the screen.
Now go back to your preview. Don't let
Not your browser.
No, what's
Share
this?
the screen. Share the
No,
screen.
you want the screen, that's correct.
Share the screen, then go back to your
Yeah, then go back to
To this part. Right?
to your.
Is it?
There's a few seconds ago.
So it's okay?
Oh, wait. Is it? It should work now. I think we can start now. Yeah, I agree. Should be fine.
Oh my god. Okay, sorry for the technical difficulties. Where was I?
About the layout.
So,
What do you see?
I think just carrying.
hello. Yeah, we should have a Wednesday lunch talk on the official way to do it. Yeah. 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 Where was I? So, oh my god.
Layout.
We're talking about how teammates can start fighting over specificity and
Yeah.
be more and more specific.
Specificity. So what SMACSS achieves is to reduce the amount of specificity you need to style your page. Reason is because if I'm designing this page using two levels of specificity, meaning I have a class and a element tag, then my partner who also is going to style it is going to add on more specificity to it by maybe creating another class, and then my changes will be override by his changes, and this would start a war between your teams, and that's not what you want. So specificity, SMACSS reduce the specificity. Well, we're talking about that. Oops. Okay, the third category is modules. This is mostly what we are going to do. Basically, you create a class and then you make a styling. This makes up most of the things that we're going to touch. Like we wouldn't touch base or layout as much as we touch modules. So modules are most probably more specific on the items that you want to style. Modules lie within the layout components, and then you shouldn't be using any ID tag or element tags inside modules. You should just use classes. So we just move on to an example. Yeah, say for example, you have a class that you want to give 100% width, and then you want the input field in that class or the division to have a width of 50%. And then now the client comes and say that in a sidebar in your app, there should also be this form, and the input for that form instead of 50% should be 100%. So this example is this is a negative example, right? But this is how many people would style it. So you say under the sidebar, you have the division, and then you change the width. So far it's okay, but then what if later your client come around and say, oh, I want another kind of division, similar division, but now I want the width to be fixed instead of 100%. And then this new division can also appear in the sidebar with a different kind of width for the input field. So how? So if you do it that way, you're gonna add another line with the sidebar and define all these things again. It's just not efficient because you have to rewrite the whole code and increase the amount of selectors you need to specify in your design. So for SMACSS, this is the way they do it. You have a default module with a default order styling. And then you create a new class that have a different styling. This is the class that will go into the sidebar in the previous example. So you do not use the sidebar at all. You just give it a new class and style it 100%. And then if your client comes and say, oh, she wants more, right? So you will create another class with this width. And then this is how you style the input in this new class. So how to use it in your HTML would be to have the default class here, and then add on the new module. We call this the submodule into your division. What this does is, right, it takes the default styling in your base class, base module, and then in this submodule, it overrides any defaults that you would like to change. In this case, it's the width. So by changing the width, by doing this way, you increase your change to this default class is you increase the specificity by one class, and you make a change to the base class, which is the default styling. Yep. So this is the way you use modules in your application. So just to basically summarize how to use modules, is basically you have a base class, and then you add submodules to it. And all the changes that should be done in the submodules, so that anybody who is styling this class will not be affected by any changes you made in the base module. So that is module for you. And while I'm on it, also you mentioned that when you name your modules, you try to avoid naming it with a location. So like you shouldn't say pod-sidebar or pod-homepage to say you want to style things in a homepage. So the next category is called the state. Basically, it deals with the change in appearance. Changes in appearance are brought about by addition of a class through JavaScript, or a pseudo class like hover, active, and lastly, media query in responsive websites. So the naming convention is like this. You have an is, then whether you want hidden or active or whatever, or you specify to a module that you want to implement the state on. So some of you might be thinking state and module are pretty similar. Well, the difference between them lies heavily on the dependency of the JavaScript. States always have JavaScript dependencies. So it's like on click, then this thing will appear. And this thing that appear, the styling for this thing that appear goes under the state category. But for module category, it's permanent. Once the page render, the styling in this module will be applied right away, and it wouldn't be changed by any JavaScript whatsoever. In using state decoration, state stylings, sometimes there might be times you need to use important because you have to override some styling. But if possible, try to prevent using important. So how to apply? Let's look at page 34. Okay, this one is just very simple. Basically, if you want to apply a state, right, let's say what happens here is there's a button that needs to be changed state when it is active. So what you should do is just to add the active state, not in the parent of the button, but on the button itself as displayed here. Well, the reason is because if you're going to put .active in the parent class, then if in this same parent class you have another button that you're going to add in, then you have to do extra styling to make sure it doesn't get activated due to the parent, because you style the parent class. Yeah, so it's just straightforward. So last one is the theme. I don't think we will be using this a lot. So basically it deals with aesthetics, colors and everything. And in this case it includes the fonts. So font size and font stylings, font families. So naming convention is that you have a theme and then you have a theme and then behind you describe what is going to be changed here. So this is usually used like when you have user preference. So girls, they like pink, so you have a theme girls, then everything would be pink. So if it's a boy who log in, then the theme will be point or something along that line. But yeah, you get my point. So all the files are inside here. So I went through all the categories with you, and so important thing is on the modules, which is what we're going to use. So just remember how you're going to use all these modules and apply it on your web app. So now some limitations that I want to talk about as mentioned in the books. So sorry, it's all over the page. Okay, so there's this. If you're going to inherit complicated inheritance, just look at an example. So basically, you need to create a calendar. A calendar has rows representing each week, and in each week there are 7 days. So there's a row, there's a cell in each row representing each day. All right. So what you're going to style, you want it to be styled this way. Each day has a color. So you style the cell as a background color. And then for today, you want to give it a different styling, so you add another class to the cell, and then change the color to the background color to red. Now, if you say you want to have the week class to be like if it's this week, that week should be highlighted a different color, like yellow. By SMACSS, this is the way to do it. You have it selected and you apply it to the row class, which represents the week. But we have a problem. This will not be rendered yellow because each cell is now given a gray color background, which overrides the week, the row, the styling in the row, because it is more deeply nested. So how will you do it? To solve it, you can either use important, which should be discouraged, or you add in another cells to bring the level of specificity to the same level. So what we're trying to do here, right, is kind of like you have to make extra rules. This is not really SMACSS way because it should be just a class. And once you apply to the class, it should actually work. But this doesn't work for this case in a SMACSS way because of the way the whole calendar is structured. So what the author wants to say is that SMACSS is a guideline and doesn't cover all kind of cases, all kind of scenarios. It's an imperfect world. So you should just use this guideline and then make changes accordingly. And solve your problem. Okay, then next one is class overkill. Oh my god, I don't know where the page is. Let me see.
Is that the title?
No,
It's
I
not the
think
title.
it's here. I'm looking for the page. I believe the page is somewhere here. Okay. Where's the
Mini section.
Okay. So like back to the example, right? So what happens is like this. You have a pop class and you have the hover state, you have the style, you have the active state, you have the style, and also other pseudo classes. But now when you create a new submodule, you also have to take care of the hover and everything, all the pseudo classes that comes along with it. So this creates a torrent of extra pseudo classes that you install for every module that you create, and it's going to be quite a big of headache. So what the author says is that this is something that you have to live with, but thank God you do not have to do it all the time because you don't really have to care about pseudo classes for most of the stylings in your pages. If there's a need to, the occurrence is not as much. Yeah, that's what he meant. As is filing. Yeah, so basically I mentioned the 5 categories. How will you file the categories, the CSS files in your application? So basically you will have a layout folder including all the CSS files that goes under layout. Then you have module, and then the base states and everything else goes in this way. So the reason why you file it this way is because your other contributors, if they want to know where you make these styling changes, they know exactly where to go very easily. So if they know that there's a .l dash something, then they know it's a layout, so they will go to layout and find what is there that changed. Then they can act accordingly to style it without breaking the previous stuff. So yep. So just to conclude, basically SMACSS reduces the specificity so that all you need to do is just add one class and the magic appears. So, and also to prevent war among your teammates. Also prevent extension and dependencies. So it's like CSS or rather SCSS have this add extend function. It is not really encouraged because if the thing that you extend from is going to change, then you have to add extra stylings to the thing that you want to change, which should not be the case. For SMACSS, it's like you have a default class as default module, and you add on the submodule. And the submodule is where you make all the changes. So there's not really much dependency among the both. If you shouldn't be making any changes to default class anyway. So basically, this reduces dependencies. So it helps maintain your website. For small websites, SMACSS might not be, the use of SMACSS might not be there, but for larger websites, you will come to appreciate the maintainability that it provides. Next is that for SMACSS, right, the whole team need to know how to execute it, and there must be a standard to do it. Otherwise, somebody would go crazy. The word there is, for those who are not familiar, it means something like going crazy. Yeah, so for example, if someone don't know about SMACSS, you go and change the default module, the base module, then it's going to break almost everything that uses the base module. So you don't want that person in your team to do this kind of destruction. So basically, this is kind of like a prerequisite to make sure that no one in the team will screw up. Then lastly is some words from the author. Ooh. Yep, so basically you can see that SMACSS keep adding classes and prevents you from like increase the specificity just to style a certain element in your web app. So basically this is kind of like something that you need to strike a balance with. Sometimes you need to use increased specificity just to style it, like the complete inheritance, the calendar example that I went through. But sometimes it's best to just have just one class and settle one module to settle all the stylings that you require. Yeah, so with that, that's the end. Thanks for your time. Yeah, so any questions? No, okay, thanks a lot. And let's go lunch.
Which check kind of uses this kind of framework?
Correct.
Like,
Did I stop?
observation of